To prove I was good enough for my socialite girlfriend, I threw everything I had into my work and finally landed a huge promotion. But then, to help an old flame of hers get a job, she sent an anonymous tip that not only cost me the promotion and raise but also got me fired. I was left a pathetic, unemployed wreck. She pretended to comfort me, but behind my back, she was laughing with her rich friends, telling them I was nothing more than her little lapdog. We dated for years, and she never let me touch her. But she turned right around and slept with her old flame. Later, when she decided her great love was an incompetent, arrogant loser who treated her poorly, she condescended to give me another chance. Take her away, she said, or we're through. I was in a position of power then, and I just had to laugh. We broke up a long time ago, didn't we? What makes you think I'd want a selfish, stupid train wreck? Through the half-open door of the private room, I could hear my girlfriend and her gaggle of socialite friends roaring with laughter. After they'd had their fill, one of them asked my girlfriend, Haley, if you do this, won't Peter try to kill you when he finds out? That was a C-suite job worth $500,000 a year. For a scholarship kid from a small town, getting that far couldn't have been easy. Yeah, really. Didn't you say he'd been prepping for that jump for ages? What if he finds out and loses it on you? Haley just laughed. Lose it? Please. Peter is my little lapdog. I could slap him silly, and he'd still come back wagging his tail for me. Besides, who told him to prep for an interview without telling me? This is his punishment. We agreed from the start that we wouldn't have any secrets from each other. He broke the rules, so he has to learn his lesson. True. Men need to be trained. You've really got it down, Haley. One anonymous tip and his career aspirations went up in smoke. If a man gets too successful, his ego gets wild and he won't behave. For families like ours, we don't need a husband who's a captain of industry. One who's obedient, like a dog, is best. The women burst into another round of laughter, and I just stood there outside the door, my blood turning to ice. I never would have imagined it. The person who stabbed me in the back, who made me lose the job I dreamed of, was the girlfriend I loved with all my heart. 6 months ago, a good friend of mine, Jason, reached out to me. He was a partner at a headhunting firm and had an opportunity he wanted to run by me. The CEO of a major subsidiary of X Group, one of the top 3 firms in the industry, had pissed off someone on the board of directors. The top brass wanted to push out the current CEO and replace him with someone more of a team player, but the idea hadn't trickled down to HR yet. Jason just so happened to have had dinner with the chairman, so he caught wind of it before anyone in the company's own HR department. He recommended me on the spot. He felt that, out of everyone he knew, my qualifications and experience were a perfect match for the role. More importantly, my easygoing personality was exactly the kind of team player attitude the board was looking for. The chairman was kind enough to give my friend the courtesy. He quickly found some time for Jason to arrange a dinner for the 3 of us. It was just a casual meet and greet, a chance to feel each other out. I must have made a good impression at that dinner. The chairman was very pleased with me. The current CEO hadn't been canned yet, but the chairman hinted that it would happen within the next 6 months. He told me to get ready, and once the position officially opened, I'd just have to go through the standard interview process. So, I spent a long time preparing for that offer. I wanted to make sure there wasn't a single hiccup in the process. A few months later, just as predicted, the CEO was let go. The job opening was sent to internal HR. With the inside track from the chairman and Jason, my resume sailed through the initial screenings. In the final round, the top executives were all impressed with me. Landing the offer was supposed to be a sure thing. I never expected to hit a snag right at the finish line. Jason called me in a panic. Someone had sent an anonymous complaint to X Group's headquarters. It claimed that, in my previous role, I had engaged in a lot of non-compliant practices to boost business. The letter contained no evidence, only accusations. But, considering the potential risk, the execs at X Group became very hesitant about hiring me. They debated it internally for 2 weeks, and the final verdict was to play it safe and pass. My offer was gone. He asked if I'd told anyone I was planning to leave my job, thinking someone got jealous and decided to sabotage me. Hearing the news was a shock. I was completely floored. After all these years in the workforce, I knew the golden rule. You don't say a word to anyone until the offer is signed. I hadn't breathed a word of this to a single soul. I racked my brain but couldn't figure out where I'd slipped up. Jason felt terrible for me. He suspected I'd made an enemy and suggested I figure out who it was. Otherwise, this person would just keep ruining any future opportunities that came my way. Losing such a great opportunity was a huge blow. I was in a funk for days. But he was right. I had to find the snake in the grass who'd screwed me over. I'd been at my old company for over a decade. I started as a management trainee and fought my way up to become the head of my business division. All of my previous bosses had given me excellent reviews. The team I managed was a well-oiled machine, and they all trusted and respected me. I honestly couldn't think of anyone who'd be bored enough to track my every move. If I had to stretch for a suspect, the only person I'd had any conflict with was the new CEO they'd recently brought in. He wanted to pivot the business, but his new direction clashed directly with the division I was in charge of. We'd argued about it several times in strategy meetings, and it was clear the CEO was not happy with me. That was actually what made me start thinking about leaving in the first place. After thinking it through, he was the only one who seemed remotely plausible. So I started being more careful at work, trying to avoid any more conflict with him. However, less than 2 weeks after the anonymous tip incident, I was called in for a meeting with the CHO. And just like that, I was asked to resign. My suspicions boiled over. I couldn't stop myself from storming into the CEO's office and getting into a huge shouting match with him. I burned that bridge completely. There was no going back to my old company. If losing the X Group offer was just a disappointment, a missed opportunity, then getting forced out of my old job was a catastrophic blow to my career. My position was quite senior, after all. After leaving my company, I couldn't immediately find a suitable role or platform. So, for the time being, I was unemployed. But I was used to being busy, and I was at the peak of my career. Suddenly having nothing to do felt completely wrong. On top of that, none of the job opportunities one saw met my expectations. As the days stretched into weeks, I grew noticeably more anxious. Back then, my girlfriend, Haley, would comfort me. She'd say, "It's okay, Peter. Even if you don't work so hard, I can support you. Don't stress yourself. Take your time finding a job. We're not in a hurry. If it comes to it, I can have my dad arrange something for you." But the whole reason I was working so hard and planning my career so meticulously was to be good enough for Haley. How could I ever rely on her family? My girlfriend, Haley, her father was in real estate, her uncle in mining. Her family wasn't just wealthy. They were loaded. And I was just an ordinary guy from a small town. Haley was under a lot of pressure for being with me. She always said her family didn't care about that stuff, that as long as I was a decent person, her parents wouldn't object. But the gap between us was just too vast. I worked my ass off to become the head of my division in 5 years, pulling in over $300,000 a year, just barely making it into the upper middle class. Only then did I feel like I could barely stand by her side. But I never ever would have thought that while I was busting my ass to climb higher and get one step closer to her, she would be the one pulling the ladder out from under me. And I certainly never imagined that while I thought we were soulmates, lovers who understood each other on the deepest level, she was behind my back, laughing about me with her friends, treating me like a joke, like her dog. In the private room, the laughter continued. But Haley sabotaging his offer is one thing. Secretly sending an anonymous email to his boss saying he was looking for another job, getting him fired from his current one. Isn't that a little messed up? Haley pouted. Well, I didn't think his boss would actually fire him, but it's better that he lost that job anyway. That stupid job of his, after taxes, he was only making a little over $100,000. Even with bonuses and profit sharing, he barely broke 300. That's not even enough for me to buy a few handbags. Low pay is one thing, but it was so demanding. He was always traveling for work and never had time for me. Now that he's unemployed, he has time to pick me up, time to go on dates with me. This is what a boyfriend is supposed to be like. So, with no job, you're just gonna let him mooch off you? Her friend pressed. Haley pursed her lips. No way. My dad worked hard for his money. Why should I spend it on some guy? When I said I'd support him, I was just saying it to make him feel better. Peter is capable. It's not like he can't find another job. Later on, he can just find something that pays well and isn't too demanding. Hearing that, I didn't even know how to describe what I was feeling. So, while she was comforting me to my face, she was laughing at me behind my back. She didn't even think it was a big deal. What if he can't find one? He's not getting any younger. He's in his 30s. In a few more years, he'll be considered ancient by tech companies. Haley frowned at that. It seemed like the possibility of me not finding a job had never occurred to her. After a moment, she said, well, mooching is definitely not an option. A man has to have his own career. If it really comes to that, I'll just break up with him. I mean, with my connections, I can have my pick of guys. As soon as those words left her mouth, I realized what a colossal idiot I'd been. I thought I was working hard for our future. But in Haley's mind, I was completely replaceable. Perhaps all she ever wanted was a boyfriend who could provide emotional support. As for who that boyfriend was, that didn't matter at all. I took one last, long look at Haley. Then I turned and walked away. I had come here tonight specifically to pick her up. She'd said she was going out for drinks with her friends, and I was worried. I never expected to overhear such a heart-wrenching truth. For the first time, I truly examined our relationship. When Haley and I first got together, I always believed our different backgrounds didn't matter. As long as I worked hard enough, was ambitious enough, I could close the gap one day. But now, it seemed the old saying about marrying within your own class had a lot of truth to it. To me, my career was my livelihood, the foundation of my life and my standing in society. But to a pampered princess like her, who had never worked a day in her life, a job was just an accessory. She could destroy my future without a second thought or a hint of apology. All because she could effortlessly obtain more money than I could earn in years of hard work. When it came down to it, she and I were never equals. Maybe it was time for me to stop dreaming I could ever stand by her side, and just go back to the world where I belong. I quickly packed my things and moved out of Haley's apartment. When Haley realized I hadn't come to pick her up, she called me several times. I declined every call. Furious, she sent me a stream of voice messages on WhatsApp, all demanding to know what I was doing. I ignored them all. Right now, I needed to find a place to cool down. Otherwise, I was afraid that if I saw her, I'd lose control and do something I'd regret. Although I had moved into her luxury condo 6 months after we started dating, I had my own 3-bedroom place. But Haley knew that address, and I didn't want her to find me, so I checked into a hotel for a few days. But being alone was torture. My mind was a mess. A heavy weight was crushing my chest. I desperately needed someone to talk to vent. After thinking it over, the only person who knew the whole story was Jason. So I called him up and asked him to go for a drink. When Jason heard me say that my girlfriend was the one who had snitched on me, he was stunned. His eyes went wide. You didn't keep the job switch a secret from her? I shook my head, the whiskey in my mouth tasting bitter. I didn't go out of my way to hide it, but I never told her either. We lived together, though. She probably went through my laptop and saw the documents, and that's how she knew I was prepping for the X Group interview. But what was the point? He asked, completely baffled. Her own boyfriend is working his ass off to get ahead, and she not only refuses to support him but actively drags him down? I thought about what she'd said, that my job didn't even pay enough for a few of her handbags, and let out a self-deprecating laugh. Her family is so rich, she probably thinks it doesn't matter whether I have a job or not. If she sabotaged it, I'd have more time to spend with her. Jason clapped me on the shoulder sympathetically. Man, rich girls are a handful. It's a real shame you missed out on X Group. The new CEO they hired is a total amateur, not even half as good as you. Mr. Wright has complained to me about him multiple times. Mr. Wright was the chairman who had recommended me. As he spoke, his eyes suddenly lit up. Hey, wait a minute. Since we know it was your girlfriend who sent the tip, I think there might be a chance to get back in the game. My hand, holding the glass, froze. How do we fix this? Don't you worry about that for now. I'll start pulling some strings. I'll let you know how it goes, one way or another. Okay, man. I really owe you one. Hey, what are you talking about? Helping you is helping myself. Don't mention it. Come on, let's drink. In that moment, my heart, which had been shattered by Haley, started to feel a little warmer. Who needs a girlfriend? When things get tough, it's your friends who have your back. I cut off all contact with Haley because I didn't pick her up from the club and didn't reply to any of her messages. She blocked me. She'd pulled this move before when we fought. And every time I was the one who went crawling back to apologize. This time I was done being her lapdog. She blocked me, so I blocked her right back. Next, I listed the 3-bedroom apartment she knew about for sale. At the same time, I rented a small 1-bedroom apartment. After a busy week, I finally had a new place to call my own. Meanwhile, Jason came through with some decent news. He said that X Group was internally discussing whether to replace the new CEO they had just hired. Mr. Wright had once again put my resume in front of the top executives. Jason had cleared up the whole anonymous tip situation for me. He even went to great lengths to get stellar references from my former bosses, which carried a lot of weight. He said my chances of landing the offer were now maybe around 40 or 50%. It was the first piece of good news in a sea of crap lately. Even though he was being cautious, I had a strange feeling about it. I felt like my journey with X Group wasn't over yet. And this time my gut was right. About 10 days later, Jason told me it was a done deal. Sure enough, 3 days after he told me that, someone from X Group's HR contacted me again. This time, since the word had come down from on high, all I had to do was have a chat with the group's CHO. With Haley out of the picture and not stirring up trouble, the process went smoothly this time. In less than a week, my offer letter was in my hands. I was ecstatic. I had to treat him to a big celebratory dinner. So I splurged and booked a private room at the most luxurious restaurant in the city. Over dinner, Jason filled me in on more of the details. It turned out that my reinstatement wasn't just because my name had been cleared. A bigger factor was that the guy they hired was completely incompetent. Apparently, he's some rich kid who got a fancy degree overseas to pad his resume and was shoehorned into the position. A few days after he started, he managed to piss off everyone under him. It got so bad that the entire subsidiary signed a joint letter to headquarters demanding his removal. Come to think of it, you really have this clown of a teammate to thank for your comeback. After a good meal and plenty of wine, Jason and I were both a little buzzed. As we were leaving the private room, Jason wasn't paying attention and bumped into someone passing in the hallway. The person immediately yelled, "What the hell? Are you blind? Didn't you see someone walking here? What's wrong?" A woman peeked out from behind the man. It was Haley. The moment our eyes met, we both froze. Then, a wave of pure anger washed over her face. "Peter, where the hell have you been? I've been looking all over for you, and you just vanished. You lost your job, and I was worried sick about you out here on your own. Turns out you've got enough cash to be living it up here. Just great." Jason, who had been about to apologize, shut his mouth. He shot me a look, asking who this was. I said flatly, "My ex-girlfriend." Haley heard me, and her face turned ugly. "Peter, what ex-girlfriend? What are you talking about?" I hadn't seen Haley in over half a month. Seeing her again, I felt surprisingly calm. Compared to her rage, my own emotions felt remarkably stable. Seeing her like this, I even found it a little funny. Isn't it obvious what I mean? We broke up. Haley's brow furrowed. "When did I say I wanted to break up with you? Peter, don't start trouble." "Who's the one starting trouble here?" Jason couldn't take it anymore and cut her off. "You're Peter's girlfriend, right? The one who sent an anonymous email to his company and a complaint to the company he was interviewing with?" At his words, a flash of embarrassment and guilt crossed Haley's face. She looked at me. You know? I just stared at her without saying a word. "Is that why you're saying we should break up?" She bit her lip. I was just joking around. She was just trying to help me. Another man's voice cut in at the same time as Haley's. It was the man Jason had accidentally bumped into. He looked a year or two younger than me, wearing a loud floral shirt and white slacks. His hair was perfectly styled. He looked like some rich brat. Noticing me sizing him up, He tilted his chin up, moved to Haley's side, and draped an arm around her shoulder. It was a deliberately provocative gesture. If this had been the old days and some other guy had laid a hand on Haley, I would have been on him in a second. But now I just stood there and watched calmly. What do you mean she was helping you? Jason sensed the malice in the man's tone. He and I both turned to look at Haley. Haley's face instantly turned bright red. She tugged on the man's sleeve. Dylan, stop it. But this guy, Dylan, ignored her. He kept his chin tilted up, looking at me. You were dying to get into X Group, right? Haley knew I wanted to get into that company too, and that I had a competitor. She had someone find out that my competitor was you, so she found a way to take you out of the running. Dylan, Haley hissed. She couldn't meet my eyes and mumbled, I'll explain this to you later. I don't agree to breaking up. Then she forcefully dragged Dylan away. As Haley pulled him along, Dylan turned back to give me a thumbs down, his contempt clear as day. Jason and I stood there, watching the two of them bicker and disappear from view. For a long time, neither of us said anything. Then Jason finally blurted out, Holy crap, Dylan, isn't that the idiot teammate I was just telling you about? Wait, he's about to get canned by X Group, and he doesn't even see it coming? I let out a cold laugh. He probably thinks he's got powerful people watching his back. After Jason and I parted ways, I went back to my apartment and looked up this Dylan guy on LinkedIn. His profile showed he had a master's in economics and management from a university in Australia. 30 years old. 2 stints of work experience overseas, both short, about a year or 2 each. The job titles were impressively inflated, though. To anyone in the know, it was obvious his resume was all smoke and mirrors. It looked like the typical playbook for a rich kid getting a degree overseas just to pad their resume. The next day, my ever-helpful friend Jason provided me with more information about Dylan. As a partner at a headhunting firm, he had a vast network of executive contacts. A few inquiries were all it took to dig up Dylan's backstory. He told me that Dylan had originally been a rich kid, but about a decade ago his family ran into trouble. His father was arrested, and he and his mother fled the country. The family business went under. Once the dust settled and they couldn't make it abroad anymore, they decided to come back to the country to try and strike it rich. I asked the head of HR at X Group this time. She told me that originally, the higher-ups thought Dylan's resume was too weak and didn't want him. But he came in with letters of recommendation from the CEOs of both Seaview Properties and Sterling Mining. One of the shareholders at X Group used to work at Sterling Mining, so through that convoluted connection, he managed to edge you out. Seaview Properties and Sterling Mining? Weren't those Haley's families and her uncle's companies? So, the recommendation letters Dylan had were arranged by Haley. Looking at it now, it seems your ex-girlfriend sending that tip wasn't so simple. The recommendation letters were one layer of insurance, and the complaint that knocked you out of the running was another. With that two-pronged attack, she was determined to make sure Dylan got the job. Jason sneered. Too bad he couldn't help but shoot himself in the foot. A fraud who got in through backroom deals, with zero management talent but a real knack for pissing people off. He thought all he had to do was suck up to his bosses, but he didn't realize it's the people under you who can really make your life hell. So, since the higher-ups weren't keen on him to begin with, as soon as that joint email from his subordinates came through, they had the perfect excuse to fire him. Peter, you start tomorrow, right? I nodded. Jason grinned. Go show that idiot how it's done. When I arrived at the subsidiary's office, my new office hadn't been cleared out yet. Dylan was in the middle of arguing with the HR director. Fired? I don't accept this. What do you mean, not a good cultural fit? I'm an executive. I'm here to bring a fresh perspective to management. It should be the people under me adapting to me, not the other way around. If I just adapt to you guys and do things the old way, I'll just be assimilated, and your company will never change. The HR director maintained a polite smile. Your ideas are very interesting, but they're not a good fit for our company. Headquarters has already made the decision for you to step down. Please respect the company's decision. Well, I'm not signing any resignation papers. The HR director's tone remained calm. In that case, I can provide you with a termination letter and a notice that will be circulated throughout the industry. You. Dylan's face turned livid. I was watching the show from the side. He caught me in his peripheral vision and snapped impatiently. What are you looking at? Get out. I didn't move. He finally turned his head fully and, after recognizing me, froze for a couple of seconds. How is it you? I smiled at the HR director behind him. The HR director opened the office door and gestured for Dylan to leave. Your key card and facial recognition have been deleted from the system. This office no longer belongs to you. It now belongs to the newly appointed CEO. Mr. Peter Chen here is the one taking your place. Dylan's face cycled through shades of red and white. Just a couple of days ago, he was mocking me in that restaurant for losing the job. My presence here today was a hard slap across his face. I walked behind the desk and sat down, looking up at Dylan. Mr. Dylan, I heard you were a highly qualified professional, educated overseas. No need to make a scene, is there? Dylan's chest heaved. He clearly didn't want to lose face in front of me. He shot me a dirty look before following the HR director out. During the lunch break, as the new CEO, I treated the mid-level managers from each department to a meal. I never would have guessed. Dylan could be so petty. He actually followed us to the restaurant and cornered me outside. You did that on purpose, didn't you? You knew these people had a problem with me, so you took them to lunch. You wanted to laugh at me, right? I was speechless. In reality, the lunch was just a way to get to know everyone. No matter how much they disliked Dylan, they weren't about to start bad-mouthing him to me on my first day. Besides, I'm not that interested in laughing at you. And anyway, do we even know each other? We'd only met once. I really didn't understand where all his hostility towards me was coming from. To my surprise, hearing me say this, Dylan seemed to find a new weapon to attack me with. His confidence returned in a flash, and he tilted his chin up slightly. I slept with your girl. You don't think that makes us acquainted? I looked at him, my face expressionless. Dylan probably thought he'd hit a nerve, because his tone became even more smug. Haley and I were first loves. Let me tell you the truth. Ever since I got back in the country, Haley has been looking out for me. She knew I was struggling to find a job, so she pulled some strings to find out about this position and even got me the recommendation letters. Technically, this job was mine from the start. Then you came along and tried to snatch it from me, and you didn't even tell Haley. That's why she got pissed and sent that complaint to the higher-ups. I don't know what tricks you pulled to get me kicked out, but you just wait. Let's see how long you last in this position. That day we ran into each other at the restaurant. I had a feeling something was off between Dylan and Haley. Now, hearing it all from his own mouth, it finally clicked. So that's how it was. I'd wondered why Haley would go to such lengths to sabotage me just because I didn't tell her I was job hunting. Turns out there was this whole first love backstory. Even though I had already broken up with Haley, hearing this now still made me sick to my stomach. What made me even angrier was what happened after work. Haley was waiting for me at the entrance of my office building. Back at the restaurant, she'd said she would explain the whole complaint letter thing to me. But it had been days. She hadn't made any effort to talk to me about it. Instead, the moment she found out I had pushed out her first love, Dylan, she came running. How did I know she was here because of Dylan? Because my new job at X Group was confidential. Besides Dylan, there was no way she could have known where I was working now. And sure enough, the first words out of her mouth when she saw me were, "How could you take Dylan's job?" I had to laugh. It was infuriating. You came all this way to talk about that and not to explain the complaint letter? When I brought that up, a flicker of guilt crossed Haley's face. But it quickly transformed back into righteous indignation. Well, why didn't you tell me you were planning to switch jobs? It's a huge deal. If I had known you were also going for a position at X Group, I wouldn't have asked people to recommend Dylan. My dad and my uncle both wrote letters of recommendation. It would have looked bad if he didn't get the job, right? The more she talked, the more she convinced herself that her reasoning was sound, and her voice grew louder. When you get right down to it, this is your fault. There are so many jobs out there. Why did you have to target the same one as Dylan? Peter, I know you're upset about the complaint letter, but you're talented. You can find a good job on your own. Why do you have to make things difficult for Dylan? So what you're saying is, Dylan isn't talented? Haley was at a loss for words. I continued with a cold laugh, and that, right there, is the real reason I got the X group offer back. Coming to me is useless. You'd be better off spending your money to enroll your first love in some executive training program. Let him study for a few years before he comes out and tries to conquer the world. Haley was furious. So you're determined to fight Dylan over this, is that it? Peter, if you keep this up, I'll really break up with you, you know that? We already broke up. I cut her off before she could say another word. From the moment I heard you and your friends laughing, saying you were going to teach me a lesson, saying my job paid too little for too much work, belittling me until I was worthless. After saying that, I didn't want to look at her for another second. Haley stood there, stunned, for a moment before grabbing my arm, her words tumbling out in a rush. I can explain. What I said that day, I didn't mean it. I was just trying to look good in front of my friends. You know their boyfriends are all from our circle, but your family is so ordinary. I shook her hand off. Sorry, but I'm not interested in being your dog anymore. Go find some man who can afford your handbags to train. I'm just a nobody. I'm not good enough for a princess like you who burns through money. Her face instantly went deathly pale. Maybe my words were too blunt and hit Haley where it hurt. She didn't have the nerve to show her face around me again. Dylan, on the other hand, somehow got my contact information. He tried every which way to add me on WhatsApp. He would often send me taunting messages. Sometimes he would send intimate photos of himself and Haley. It seemed like he thought the only way to get revenge for me taking his job was to rub in the fact that he'd cuckolded me. Unfortunately for him, I was long over Haley and never responded to his provocations. Seeing that I wasn't taking the bait, Dylan actually sent me a short video of him and Haley fooling around when they were teenagers. The angle was clever. He never showed his own face, but Haley was in clear view. He then bragged to me on WhatsApp. I was her first job woman. You're only fit to pick up my scraps. I just thought, what a complete idiot. Did he really think that after dating Haley for 5 or 6 years, I wouldn't have her parents' contact information? Before he could delete it, I quickly took a screenshot and saved the video. Then I turned around and sent it to Haley's father, the CEO of Seaview Properties. I added a message. Mr. Brown, even though your daughter and I didn't part on the best of terms, I'd hate to see her end up with a scumbag. A long time later, Haley's father replied, Okay, I understand. Then he immediately deleted me. I just smiled. If he wasn't afraid of me laughing at him, why bother deleting me? Sure enough. A week later, the financial news reported that the head of Seaview Properties had been rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment after a sudden spike in blood pressure. His eldest son was temporarily taking over as CEO of the group. Half a month later, news broke of a major shift in Seaview Properties' shareholding. 40% of the 60% of shares held by Mr. Brown were transferred to his son, the new CEO. And along with that came the news of Haley's impending marriage. Jason moved in executive circles, so he heard the news before I did. Your ex-girlfriend is marrying that Dylan guy, he told me. I wasn't surprised. When I was with Haley, I met her father twice. I could tell right away that he was the very traditional, patriarchal type, man works, woman stays home. To put it bluntly, he was sexist. The only reason Haley had a good life was because her family was wealthy, so it wasn't immediately obvious. But the fact that she majored in art in college and was never asked to join the family business after graduation told you everything you needed to know. Neither her father nor her brother ever considered her one of their own. She was always going to be married off sooner or later. Dylan had a private video of Haley. Given her father's traditional mindset, to avoid a scandal, he would just marry her off to Dylan to shut him up. That way, if anything ever did leak, it could be explained away as something between a husband and wife. As for whether his daughter would be happy marrying a broke, arrogant rich kid from a fallen family, that was clearly not part of his consideration. Jason was initially furious on my behalf. But after I explained it all, he calmed down. You're sure those two are going to be miserable together? I nodded. Having been with Haley for so long, I knew her personality inside and out. At her core, she's attracted to power and success. My background was nothing compared to hers, but I went to a top-tier university, and my major was one of the best in the school. I was consistently in the top 10 of my class. I was then accepted into my university's graduate program, spent a year abroad on a full scholarship, and graduated with a dual master's degree. It was a completely different world from her, who got into a foreign university by her family just throwing money at it. When we first got together, she was the one who pursued me. When she confessed her feelings, she said her ideal man was smart, ambitious, and capable. But we were together for too long. She started to see me as ordinary. From an outsider's perspective, for a kid from a small town with no connections to get to where I am today is actually pretty damn impressive. I'm not trying to brag, but if she got tired of someone like me, she definitely wouldn't want to marry a loser like Dylan who needed her to get him a job. I could only imagine that over the past few weeks, being forced by her father and brother to marry Dylan, she must have been on the verge of a complete breakdown. I was right. After the news of the Seaview Properties CEO marrying off his daughter broke, Haley and Dylan's backgrounds were dug up and laid bare. Although the media tried to spin it as a fairy tale story of childhood sweethearts finally getting their happy ending, they couldn't stop some paparazzi from capturing photos of the two of them arguing in the street. Suddenly, rumors of the engagement being off were everywhere. Then, just as quickly, they vanished without a trace. A couple of days later, Haley showed up looking for me again, her cheek red and swollen. The moment she saw me, she burst into tears. "Peter, take me away. Get me out of here. I don't want to marry Dylan. He sent that private video of me to my dad to force this marriage. I'm going crazy." That's when I realized Haley thought Dylan was the one who sent the video to her father. Her father had apparently flown into a rage, immediately froze all her credit cards, and confiscated all her properties. When a confused Haley went home, she was met with 2 hard slaps from her father and the explicit video. Before she could even process what was happening, she was given her orders from her father and brother. Marry Dylan as soon as possible and move to Australia with him. Dylan was also called to the house. But Dylan was much quicker on the uptake than Haley. As soon as he realized I had exposed everything, he immediately started negotiating with her father. Marriage was fine, and he could guarantee the video wouldn't leak. But he had to be given a senior position at Seaview Properties. After a round of bargaining, her father was so enraged he ended up in the hospital. Haley then received 2 slaps from her brother. That was followed by the news of the share transfer. Seaview Properties was now completely out of Haley's hands. All the real power was with her brother. Dylan was indeed given a position in the company as a VP of Human Resources. It was a senior title, sure, but with a proper president of HR above him, his VP title was in name only. So Dylan started fighting with Haley. He argued that as the future son-in-law of the chairman, how could he be stuck in a vice president role? Haley, having been forced into this marriage, finally saw her true place in the family. How could she be foolish enough to fight for Dylan again? Her dad might have tolerated her getting a recommendation letter for Dylan once, but her married brother, with a child of his own, had no intention of spoiling his little sister. And so, all of Haley's long-suppressed frustrations finally erupted. She got into a heated argument with Dylan in public, pushing and shoving him. Someone with a camera caught it all, and it became a hot news story. After the story blew up, Haley tried to use it as an excuse to call off the engagement. But Dylan pulled out their old video and threatened her. "I already have a green card. Worst case, I just leave the country. But you still have to live in this social circle. If you dare call this off, I'll ruin your reputation in this country. I'll let every man in the world enjoy the sight of your pretty little body." Haley had never been threatened or humiliated like this in her entire life. She couldn't help but slap Dylan across the face. Unfortunately, Dylan was a complete piece of trash who had no problem hitting a woman. The second Haley's hand left his face, he grabbed her by the hair and slapped her right back, shouting, "You're a cast-off from the Brown family. You should be grateful I'm even willing to take you. Ugh, when I first came back, I thought you might be useful, but now I see I was blind. You're crying? I'm the one who should be crying, being shackled to your family with no way out. Haley cried that she would have her dad teach him a lesson. But just as Dylan said, her dad was recovering in a private hospital and refused to see her. And her brother's words were identical to Dylan's. Who told you to sleep with a guy like Dylan? If you don't marry him and he goes crazy, he'll tarnish the Brown family's name. You may not care about your reputation, but I care about mine. Marry Dylan quietly, and I'll still give you your share of the domestic properties. Otherwise, even though you're my sister, once you're married, you're no longer part of this family. I wouldn't have to give you a single penny. Her brother's coldness made Haley break down in tears. Everyone in their circle knew she had been abandoned by her family. Her so-called socialite friends all avoided her. And so, finally, she remembered me. She stood in front of me, cursing Dylan. I was so wrong, Peter. Dylan is a monster. He has no ability of his own, but he blames me for not getting him a better future. I just found out he has a gambling problem, that he was deep in debt overseas and had to come back. My dad and my brother knew he was a walking disaster, and they're still pushing me into this fire. If I marry him, I'll die. Please take me away. I'd rather marry you than him. In that moment, where was the arrogant, confident Haley I once knew? She ignored the stares of the people around us, crying and begging me. In the past, when I was deeply in love with her, I would have rushed to comfort her. But now, seeing her like this, I couldn't help it. I laughed out loud. You deserve it. Her whole body went rigid. She looked up at me in disbelief. What did you say? I looked down at her, enunciating each word. I said, you deserve it. Isn't this all your own doing? In your eyes, what kind of sucker do you take me for? Someone who would happily marry you after you stabbed me in the back? Or is marrying you supposed to be some incredible prize? Haley's face went white. Don't you love me anymore? Love? I scoffed. Don't make me laugh. You don't even deserve to say that word. I took a deep breath. Haley, have you ever stopped to think how hard it is for a guy like me with no background to fight my way to where I am today? And the funny thing is, just a month ago, you were here questioning me about why I took Dylan's job. When you were questioning me, did you ever stop to think that because of you, I lost that offer and my original job? Did you ever think about how I was supposed to live? But you still got into X group in the end. That's because I have a reliable friend who worked his ass off to turn the tide for me. I cut her off, my voice sharp. If it weren't for him, I'd still be a goddamn unemployed wreck right now. A long gap in my resume would have wiped out the last 5 years of my career. The market is so competitive. I might have had to leave this city altogether. Do you have any idea what those 2 letters you wrote could have destroyed? You were the girlfriend I trusted most, the woman I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. After it all happened, how could you have the nerve to sit with me and figure it out, to guide me into blaming my old boss, Haley? When you looked at me then, were you dying of laughter inside, just like when you were bragging to your friends? Was I just a big idiot to you? Haley fell silent, lowering her head to wipe away her tears, sobbing uncontrollably. Jason was supposed to meet me for dinner. Since Haley was blocking my way, he came looking for me. Seeing her pathetic act, I suddenly felt bored. I turned to Jason as he walked over. You see this? She still thinks Dylan sent that video to her dad. Jason, who knew the whole story, raised an eyebrow. Haley, who had been crying, instantly looked up. What? I deliberately mimicked the condescending tone she had used at the club that night, pointing at her and laughing to Jason. This idiot. To this day, she still doesn't know that Dylan sent the video to me first to show off, and then I was the one who sent it to her dad. And she wants me to help her escape her wedding. Tell me, do all ex-girlfriends have this much nerve? Jason laughed too. I don't know. Maybe they just have a really high opinion of themselves. As we both laughed at her, Haley fled in humiliation. After that, she never appeared before me again. Later, I saw in the news that Haley did end up marrying Dylan. They moved to Australia shortly after the wedding. It was the well-connected Jason who told me that Haley had been effectively exiled by her family. They gave her a sum of money and sent the couple on their way. 2 years later, I heard about Haley again in the news. The headline read, Seaview Properties heiress files for divorce. citing domestic abuse. That's when I learned that Dylan had been arrested for hitting Haley, and she wanted to divorce him and return to the country, but it seemed her family wasn't supportive. I glanced at it for a moment, then closed the news tab. These past few years, my life has been good. I've steadily climbed the ladder and even received equity in the company. Haley, and the pain she once caused me, are like a distant cloud. Seeing news about her is like seeing a stranger. But sometimes I'm grateful to her, because she made me understand something. The career you build for yourself is the only thing that will never betray you.